My husband used to say no one would ever take me seriously, that my little fashion app was just expensive therapy. Then Forbes called, and suddenly he had questions. If you've ever been told you're too much, too loud, or simply not enough, hit that subscribe. This one's for us. My husband used to say I had potential, the kind you pat on the head and hope doesn't embarrass you at dinner. Potential, he said, was cute on paper but dangerous in real life, like high heels on cobblestones, bound to collapse under pressure. So when Forbes called, not him, not his partners, me, I should have known a reckoning was coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you to the night he humiliated me. It was early spring, one of those Manhattan evenings that fools you into thinking winter's finally gone. My reflection caught in the mirrored elevator of the Allerton Club, the kind of place with $35 cocktails and secret staircases that led to even more exclusive rooms. I wore a custom Verta jumpsuit, emerald green, constructed from our signature recycled silk blend, the one I designed during a layover in Zurich when I couldn't sleep because we'd missed payroll again. Verta was always stitched from insomnia. My startup, my dream, wasn't just a sustainable fashion tech platform. It was an answer, a rebellion, an ecosystem. Our fabric was traceable, our supply chain transparent, our mission stubborn, but none of that mattered in the room we were walking into. Not here, not yet. Adam's hand rested lightly on the small of my back, like a placeholder. His voice dropped to a whisper. Remember, he said, smiling for the couple exiting the elevator. Tonight is about optics. Don't pitch unless someone asks. I should have laughed. Adam Blake, my husband of 10 years. A Harvard MBA with a jawline made for magazine covers and an ego to match. He was one of the youngest partners at Danforth Capital, a firm known for tech investments that tripled overnight, and for vaporizing any startup that didn't serve their bottom line, including mine. Because for all his progressive tweets and TED-style dinner toasts about elevating female founders, Adam had never once brought me into his world. Not officially, not to pitch, not to raise, not even to consult. He said it was to avoid conflict of interest. I believed him. Until that night. The main room was already buzzing when we entered. Velvet walls, dim amber light, jazz that sounded curated by an algorithm desperate to seem human. Founders mingled like they were auditioning for Vanity Fair spreads, and the air smelled like money and ambition, expensive perfume and nervous sweat. I spotted Cara Lee by the bar, her angular black bob slicing across her cheekbones like an exclamation point. Founder of Stripe and Spine, a wellness app that had pivoted 3 times and still managed to land Series B. She waved. I waved back. But before I could move, Adam steered me in the opposite direction. There's someone I want you to meet, he said. He guided me toward a circle of investors clustered around a tall, striking woman with almond skin and waist-length waves. She laughed with the kind of confidence that required no permission. I recognized her immediately. Sloane Vega, fashion's newest tech darling, creator of Enrobe, a subscription-based AI closet that learns your lifestyle and curates your brand. I'd tested the app. It was slick, superficial. Half her fabrics were synthetic blends sourced from unsustainable vendors. But her Instagram followers didn't know that, or care. Adam adored her. I could tell by the way he lingered near her elbow, the way he angled his body just slightly toward her even when he was introducing me. This is Camila, my wife, he said with a casualness that made my stomach twist. She's working on something similar in fashion sustainability, more of a boutique scale. Hi, I said, offering a polite smile. Sloane tilted her head, not unkindly. I've heard of Verta. You did the upcycling capsule with Fundación Vida, right? I blinked. Yes, we launched it in Rio during Fashion Week. Very cool, she said, before turning back to Adam. So as I was saying, we're finalizing terms on the Series A. I want someone on board who gets both tech and storytelling. Someone who can open the right doors. That's when he said it. In front of everyone. In front of me. I'd be honored to help, Adam replied. You've got something real here, Sloane. You're the kind of founder I can actually believe in. Silence stretched like raw silk. A beat, then 2. And then someone laughed, and the conversation resumed. But I had stopped hearing. My blood roared in my ears. I stared at him, my husband, as he praised another woman's startup using the exact words I'd begged to hear for years. Not just praised, promised. You're the kind of founder I can actually believe in. As if I hadn't built Verta from nothing. As if I hadn't bootstrapped it through COVID, through childcare crises, through nights he spent networking. while I coded in a co-working space that reeked of burnt coffee and male entitlement, as if I hadn't pitched 72 times to rooms that looked right through me. And here he was, giving away the one thing he'd always withheld from me: belief. I excused myself quietly, walked to the far end of the mezzanine, toward the window overlooking the East River. The city glowed like circuitry, alive and indifferent. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A Google alert. Verda founder Camila Rivera makes Forbes Next 100 list. The article had gone live. I stared at the headline, at my face under those 4 block letters. A moment I should have felt joy, victory, something, and all I felt was empty, because Adam didn't know. And worse, I didn't want him to know. I wanted him to find out the way the world would, in the quiet after the explosion. I wanted his colleagues to bring it up at lunch, for his firm's group chat to blow up with links, for his assistant to mention casually that his wife had just been named one of the most promising entrepreneurs in America, and for him to realize that he'd been so busy investing in other women's futures, he missed the fact that one had already built an empire right under his roof. A glass shattered behind me. Laughter. More toasts. Adam's voice again. Low, conspiratorial, intimate. I turned and walked away, past the noise, past the velvet, past everything I'd once thought I needed from him. Because something had shifted. A quiet tether inside me had finally snapped. Not with anger, not even betrayal. With clarity. He hadn't just doubted me. He'd dismissed me. And I was done asking him to see me. The world already had. The morning after your face appears on Forbes should feel like champagne. Mine tasted like silence. I woke before Adam. Not that he'd been particularly present in bed. He'd stumbled in sometime after 2 a.m., the smell of aged bourbon and self-importance clinging to him like cologne. I heard the click of his belt, the sigh as he sat on the edge of the mattress, the creak of hardwood beneath his bare feet, but not a word, not even when he saw me awake. He'd barely registered me, as if I were an ambient part of the furniture, the muted lamp on his side of the bed, the cool weight of the duvet, the silence he expected to hold all his secrets. I didn't speak either, because I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wanted to watch it happen. So I rose at 6:30 sharp, as always, slid into my robe, the navy silk one he hated because it looked too serious, and made my way to the kitchen. The apartment was cold. Our Tribeca loft was all steel beams and floor-to-ceiling windows, but in the early light it felt more like a high-end warehouse than a home. Every surface spotless, every line curated, and all of it. The Vitso shelves, the matte black appliances, the $10,000 sofa he insisted on, financed with my money, my Series Seed payout. The one Adam had suggested I roll into something sensible, like real estate. He didn't mind my ambition when it paid the down payment. I turned on the espresso machine and scrolled through my phone. The notifications were endless. Camila! Forbes! Holy shit. You did it, amiga. I'm crying. You're in. Saw it on LinkedIn before I saw it from you. Own that shit. Want to come on the podcast next week? Our theme is women who build without permission. And there it was. The headline, pushed by nearly every startup media aggregator. Camila Rivera, founder of Verda, redefines fashion tech from the ground up. Underneath, my photo, taken 6 months ago. Black backdrop, no smile, hair in a tight bun, eyes forward. Not because I wanted to look serious, but because the photographer asked me to imagine the last time someone underestimated me. I hadn't had to imagine. I'd just thought of dinner the night before. I was still standing at the counter when Adam entered, barefoot and bleary-eyed. He grabbed the remote and flicked on the TV. Bloomberg's Morning Loop was running, a panel of commentators discussing AI regulation, IPO rumors, and there, mid-segment, bottom ticker, Camila Rivera, named one of Forbes' Next 100. I didn't move, just sipped my espresso, letting the moment hang. He noticed. Finally. Wait, he said, rubbing his eyes. Was that? I glanced at the screen, then back at him. Yeah, he blinked. You didn't tell me. You didn't ask. Silence bloomed between us, thick as fog. Then, congratulations. Wow. Forbes. His laugh was shallow, forced. So that's why you disappeared last night? I didn't answer. He walked to the fridge, opened it, stared into its contents like they might reveal a strategy, then closed it without taking anything. You should have told me. I would have, I don't know, celebrated. With who? I asked, my voice cool. Sloan? Your new favorite founder? His head snapped toward me. That's not fair. No, I said, setting my cup down. What's not fair is you calling my work boutique scale, in front of a room full of people who could fund Verda with their Uber receipts. Adam's nostrils flared. It was a joke. It was a message, I corrected, and I heard it loud and clear. He didn't argue, didn't apologize either, just walked toward the balcony, pulled open the door, and stepped into the cold air like he needed distance. I watched him from behind, the back of a man who only saw my value when it was validated by strangers, who couldn't support me unless someone richer said I was worthy first. He was no longer embarrassed of me. He was embarrassed by the fact that I'd proven him wrong, publicly. I let the silence stretch until he came back inside, exhaling sharply. You know, he said, not looking at me, a feature's just a feature. Doesn't guarantee traction. And there it was, the pivot, from surprise to dismissal, from wow to let's not get ahead of ourselves. I smiled, because that was the exact moment I knew I was done shrinking to protect his image of himself. You're right, I said calmly. Traction's still up to me. And with that, I walked back to the bedroom and shut the door. I didn't hear from him for hours, not until 2:17 p.m., when I got a calendar invite forwarded by a mutual acquaintance. Intro: Adam Blake, Sloan Vega, Series A Advisory. No explanation. No warning. Just the confirmation that he'd formalized whatever had started the night before. She'd taken my place. Professionally, emotionally, maybe even literally. And I didn't care. I didn't even flinch. Because while Adam was busy playing kingmaker, I was calling Carla, my lawyer, to start rewriting every line of equity structure we'd once agreed to over wine and bad takeout. Every advisory agreement, every shared subscription, every financial entanglement. I wanted it all audited. Verda was mine. And if I was going to scale it without him, I needed to be surgical, not sentimental. That night, I booked a solo table at Meliora, the same restaurant where Adam had once toasted my first sale with a $200 bottle of wine and whispered, "This is just the beginning." I ordered a glass of red, opened my laptop, reviewed the Forbes analytics dashboard. 372,000 views in 24 hours. Inbound emails from 4 investors, 2 of them women. This was just the beginning. The maitre d' stopped by near dessert. "Ms. Rivera?" he said, smiling. "There's someone here who asked if she could say hello." I turned. Cara Lee. She approached the table in a tailored pantsuit, confidence trailing her like perfume. "Read your Forbes piece," she said, sitting without asking. "It's a game changer." I thanked her. "Let me guess," she said. "Adam still hasn't read it?" I paused. He skimmed. Cara smirked. "Don't worry. His entire LP circle has, including someone I know at Constellation Ventures. You should take that call tomorrow." I raised an eyebrow. She leaned in. "Word is, Sloan's numbers are shaky. Glossy pitch. Weak retention. But you? You've got the data and the mission. They're watching." I looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't a friendly chat. This was a handoff. Cara had once been the only woman in the room. Now she was making room for the next one. "I'll take the call," I said. "Good," she replied, standing. "And Camila?" "Yes?" She smiled. "Don't look back." And the apartment was quiet when I returned. Adam wasn't home. I didn't text to ask where he was. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting a private memo for my team. Internal use only. Q2 roadmap. Verda 2.0. The version without permission. Because now it was war. Not against him. Against doubt. And this time, I wasn't fighting alone. I didn't cry. Not when I found the email that confirmed he'd transferred half our joint savings to a bridge loan for Enrobe. Not when I read the pitch deck Sloan had sent him, one that included quotes from him as a strategic advisor, without my name mentioned once. Not even when I saw the NDA he'd signed, dated 2 months before the Forbes feature, binding him to confidentiality while quietly extracting the best parts of Verda's original IP structure. I didn't cry, because crying would have meant I still believed he could be reasoned with, and I'd finally stopped mistaking proximity for partnership. Carla called at 8:04 a.m. sharp. "Good news first or bad?" "Start with blood," I said, already scrolling through spreadsheets in my living room, barefoot on the cool wood floor. "Adam's name appears nowhere on your company's articles of organization or convertible note structure," she said. "No equity, no founder shares, nothing formal." I exhaled. "And the bad?" He listed himself as a consulting advisor on multiple calls with Enrobe's pre-seed investors, she continued, her voice clipped. If you can prove he had access to your pitch materials during that period, we can pursue trade misappropriation, especially if the fundraise includes recycled language. Language like data-driven sustainability for luxury life cycle. Exactly. That line was mine, I said flatly. I used it in a tech summit talk 3 years ago, recorded and time-stamped. Then we have a case, Carla said. You want to go nuclear? I looked out the window. The city stretched below, indifferent and relentless, a living diagram of cause and consequence. No, I said, not yet. And that afternoon, I packed a box, just one. Into it went every remnant of what I had once mistaken for partnership. Our wedding album, the ceramic mug from the Napa honeymoon, the photo of us outside the co-working space where I sketched the first Verta wireframe, while Adam told me to scale down expectations. A copy of the Wired magazine issue, where he appeared in a group photo of next-gen VCs, his hand resting lightly on Sloane's chair. I wrote a note on top in pen. Here's everything you can keep. Everything else is mine. Then I sealed the box and left it on his desk. He wouldn't notice for 2 days, because by then, Adam Blake was already fighting to stay relevant. Wednesday, I met with Constellation Ventures. The boardroom sat 43 floors above Madison, glass walls, and absolute silence. The managing partner, Talia Chen, wore gray silk and black combat boots, a balance I instantly respected. I've had your deck since December, she said, pouring coffee into white ceramic cups. Adam said it was too niche, but Forbes changed the conversation. She smiled without warmth. I don't like being misled. I didn't flinch. Neither do I. She leaned forward. We're prepared to lead your Series A. $5 million, clean cap table, founder control. But we want you visible. That means brand building, panels, podcasts, no shadows. I met her gaze. I've spent 10 years in the shadows, I said. I'm done whispering. The announcement went out Thursday morning. Verta secures $5 million Series A, led by Constellation Ventures, founder Camila Rivera to expand global infrastructure. By noon, my inbox was a war zone. Every contact, every supportive acquaintance, every investor who had once ghosted me during seed was suddenly reactivating their interest. But Adam? He didn't call. He emailed. Subject, coffee? Camila, I'd like to talk. No agenda. Just to clear the air. You've clearly built something amazing. Maybe I didn't see it. Maybe I did and didn't know what to do with it. Either way, I owe you a real conversation. Adam. I stared at the screen, then deleted the message. I had moved past real conversations. Now I dealt in deliverables. Then that night, I stood in my walk-in closet with a tape measure. Verta's new HQ was under renovation, and the space I planned to occupy, a corner office overlooking the Hudson, was still empty. I imagined my desk, the wall of fabric swatches, the timeline mural we'd designed together as a team, a physical map of every battle fought and won. The clothes I selected for the press week that followed weren't just outfits. They were armor. Every sleeve tailored sharp, every heel intentional, every stitch a refusal to apologize for the space I occupied. Because this time, I wouldn't be introduced as Adam's wife. This time, they'd know my name first. By Friday, the blowback reached him. I didn't need to hear it. I saw it in his silence. The industry is small. Rumors travel faster than truth, and no one forgets the man who called his own wife boutique scale before she raised more capital than half his portfolio combined. He didn't text, didn't show up, didn't challenge me publicly. Because men like Adam, they only fight battles they think they can win. And I moved out the following Monday. There was no dramatic scene, no broken glass, no slammed doors. I hired a move coordinator named Shay, who wore wireless earbuds and carried an iPad like a weapon. She organized everything in 3 hours. Color-coded bins, bar-coded inventory, my belongings separated from his with surgical precision. Adam arrived halfway through. He stood in the doorway like a stranger in his own life. You're really leaving? I didn't stop taping the last box. He looked around. At the bare shelves, the missing art, the vanished echoes of something that used to feel like marriage. This is insane, he said. We built this together. I turned. No, I said. I built this. You watched. He blinked. You're not even going to try? I walked past him, handed Shay the inventory sheet and replied without looking back. I already did. For 10 years. The invitation arrived 3 days after I moved out. Subject line: Keynote confirmed. Camila Rivera, Women Who Scale 2025. The body of the email was short, formal, efficient. Hi, Camila. We're thrilled to have you as our closing keynote at this year's Women Who Scale conference. Your story has ignited serious traction and buzz. You'll be on stage at 4:45 p.m., following panels with Marla S., Kareen F., and Amy from Seated. Please confirm travel and media preferences by EOD. Let's make this iconic. Team WWS. I read it twice, then once more. My first thought, I don't have anything to wear. Not because I lacked options. The Verda archive was stacked with prototypes and finished lines, but nothing felt right. Nothing said, this is me now. The woman who left. The woman who stayed standing. But that's what the collection was for. Verda 2.0 wasn't just a relaunch. It was a redefinition, a reclamation. That night, I sketched until 3 a.m., barefoot in my new apartment, a high-ceilinged studio in Chelsea with exposed brick and no furniture except a mattress and a steel garment rack. I designed 3 looks by hand: minimal lines, defiant fabric, unapologetic tailoring. Each outfit marked a piece of the story. Look 1, dismissed. Sharp angles, stiff collar, sleeves that looked like armor. Look 2, erosion, sheer sleeves over reinforced seams, softness over resilience. Look 3, arrival, bold color, unexpected structure, a garment that demanded the room. The third one made me cry, because it was mine, entirely. No compromises, no input. No, what would Adam think? Just vision, executed. The conference venue was a refurbished textile mill in Brooklyn. Industrial, sunlit, thick with curated feminism. Lucite name tags, custom signage, neon-lit slogans about disruption and equity. Verda was sponsoring the lanyards, each made from offcuts of our Q1 collection, upcycled silk blends that looked like watercolor paintings. By 4:30, the main hall was packed. 600 seats, all full. Cameras, live stream screens, whispered updates through headset mics. And then someone said his name. Not in malice, not in warning, just casually, as part of a conversation near the coffee bar. Adam Blake's fund-backed enrobe after all. Heard he's getting dragged on Twitter for it now. Something about IP overlap with Verda? I didn't react. Not visibly. But inside, a switch flipped. Because Adam wasn't just fading into irrelevance. He was fighting to stay relevant, and using my name as leverage. I could have responded, called Carla, issued a statement. But instead, I walked backstage and told the stage manager to turn off the teleprompter. I'm going off script. She looked startled. You're sure? I'm sure. My name. Oh, they called me up to the stage with a bio that still made me uncomfortable. Named one of Forbes' Next 100, founder of Verda, leader in sustainable fashion tech. Series A closed at $5 million, currently scaling across 3 continents. None of that captured who I was. Only what I'd survived. As I stepped into the spotlight, the room fell silent. Rows of women, some in tailored suits, some in borrowed blazers, some in sneakers and backpacks, just hoping someone on stage would say something true. So I did. I was told not to pitch at investor mixers, I began, that I should wait for someone to ask me what I did, that I should talk less about fashion and more about logistics, that I should position myself as a founder, not a fashion girl with a nice idea. Laughter. Tight. Familiar. I scanned the audience. Eye contact everywhere. Women nodding, leaning in, recognizing themselves. I was told, by someone I loved, that being named in Forbes didn't mean traction, that press isn't profit, that visibility can't be measured in dollars. And for years, I believed that. I paused, let the silence speak, until I realized traction is what we build when no one is looking, and visibility is what we earn when we stop asking permission to be seen. Applause. Not polite, not delayed, immediate, sharp, like they'd been holding it in. I continued. I don't want to inspire you, I said. I want to equip you. Here's what I did after Forbes, in order. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me filled with a minimalist flowchart. 1. Audit your cap table. 2. Review all access points, passwords, systems, cloud storage. 3. Revoke, reclaim, rewrite. 4. Document everything. 5. Hire women. Then pay them. Then promote them. Laughter again. Then cheering. This time I smiled. And then I ended with a line I hadn't planned. They tried to build empires on our backs, and then called us ungrateful when we stood up straight. But the truth is, they didn't build us. We were always builders. They just underestimated our blueprints. The standing ovation lasted over a minute. Backstage, my hands were shaking. I wasn't afraid. Just changed. The kind of internal shift that doesn't reverse. Like glass that's already shattered. You can glue it, but it never becomes invisible again. And he texted me that night. Of course he did. Didn't realize you were speaking today. Someone sent me the clip. It's a lot. Can we talk? I didn't answer. He called. I let it ring. Then I opened Instagram. The clip had already been posted by 3 different accounts. One had 92,000 likes. Comments like, "The way she doesn't flinch. She's saying what all of us feel. Camila Rivera is my new CEO crush." I watched it once, from the outside. Saw the way my eyes held steady. Saw the way I stepped forward on the final line. It didn't feel like performance. It felt like returning to myself. And I knew then that the hardest part was over. Not the logistics, the silence, the years of being told to wait, to yield, to speak only when spoken to. Those were done. The first red flag came in the form of an exclamation point. Not shouted, typed. Buried in an email chain from our licensing attorney, 3 sentences deep, sandwiched between legalese and optimism. Which is all standard, except for one clause in the 2021 convertible SAFE agreement that might create friction if you expand internationally. I reread the sentence twice. Then opened the attached document and found it. Section 6.3, a single paragraph in pale gray font, nestled beneath a line item that looked innocuous. Any international IP derived from original product specs, even if modified, may be subject to co-review if initial funders demonstrate material advisory influence within 18 months of execution. Translated? If someone who invested in my early days claimed to have influenced the way I developed Verda's international expansion, they could demand legal review, or worse, pause rollout. And there it was. Adam's name. Not on the board. Not as an investor. But listed in a footnote as a pre-seed strategic advisor. And I remembered the moment like a flashback during surgery. We were sitting on the floor of our old apartment, December 2020. Laptops open, empty wine glasses beside us. Verda was just an idea with a deck and a broken Shopify template. I needed bridge capital to keep paying Paula, my lead developer in São Paulo. Adam offered to write the check. I said no. He said, "Then let me sign something. Anything. Just so I can help without taking ownership." I should have known. Even generosity with Adam came with fine print. Baikian, I forwarded the email to Carla immediately. 10 minutes later, she called. "I want to scream," she said by way of greeting. "This clause is buried like it was meant to be missed." "It was," I said flatly. She sighed. "Do you have evidence he didn't influence the expansion strategy?" "I have receipts." "Good. We'll need timeline documentation. And something stronger. Testimony. Ideally, someone who was advising you during that window." I already knew who she meant, and I already knew how much I didn't want to make that call. Her name was Gianna Alves. She was my first co-founder. We met at a Women in Tech brunch 5 years ago, and launched Verda from the basement of a converted laundromat in Bushwick. She was all systems and spreadsheets. I was vision and user flow. For a while, we worked like puzzle pieces, until her risk tolerance ran out. She left during the pandemic, right after our 3rd pivot, convinced we'd never scale. "I need stability," she'd said. "I can't keep betting on maybe." I didn't blame her, but I never forgave her either. And I stared at her contact in my phone for a full hour, then called. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Camila? Hi, Gia." A pause. Careful. Wary. "Wow. It's been a while. I won't waste time," I said. "Verda is expanding to Latin America, and there's a clause in an old safe that might compromise our IP. I need someone who can testify that you, not Adam, were my primary strategic advisor in 2021. Another pause. Then, "I'll do it." Just like that. No conditions, no questions. Just a simple, "I'll do it." I blinked. "You will?" "I didn't believe in the business the way you did," she said. "But I always believed in you." I walked away from that, Camila. You didn't. You deserve to scale without someone else's fingerprints on your legacy. The relief came slowly, like exhaling underwater. "Thank you." She hesitated. "There's just one thing." "Here it comes," I thought. "You'll need to let go of hating me," she said. I closed my eyes. I don't hate you. You did. Maybe. Then maybe this can be our reset. The affidavit was notarized by Friday. Carla attached it to the rest of our legal packet. Timestamps, code logs, Slack threads from the year Adam barely replied to my texts, but still managed to insert himself into pitch decks. By Monday morning, the clause was nullified. Verda's rollout across São Paulo, Bogotá, and Mexico City could proceed. Full speed. The relief was short-lived, because the next headline hit harder than I expected. Enrobe under investigation for misleading claims in sustainability metrics. Below it, a subhead that made my blood go cold. Internal sources cite language copied from competitor platforms, with unclear sourcing on impact models. I clicked the article. There it was. My language, my words, lifted almost verbatim. We believe transparency isn't optional. It's structural. It's coded into every fiber we touch. I'd written that line at 2 a.m. during a thunderstorm in Rio. It had been the cornerstone of our ethical model, and now it was showing up in Enrobe's pitch decks. But not attributed to Verda, attributed to Adam Blake. Carla called within 10 minutes. You ready for this? I stared at my reflection in the window, tired, wired, fully awake. I've been ready for years. And we didn't sue right away. That would have been obvious, petty, emotional. Instead, we did what I do best. We built a counter-narrative. Tab Tuesday. I sat for an interview with Fast Company. They'd been requesting a feature ever since Forbes, and I'd delayed it, waiting for the right time. This was it. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Kendra, opened with small talk, then leaned in. We've been reviewing Verda's early pitch materials, she said. There's a quote in there that's also in Enrobe's investor deck. You know anything about that? I smiled. Sure, I said. That's mine. You ever think about pursuing legal action? I leaned forward. I think about women who build something in silence, and then watch someone else try to rename it. And I think about how loud we have to be when we finally speak. When the quote ran in bold, they renamed what I built, but they'll never own it. The day the article dropped, Adam called 6 times. I didn't answer, but I did send one text. The silence was my kindness. It's expired. And I used to believe that silence was dignity, that restraint was class, that not responding was some elevated form of grace, the kind you saw in old movies where the woman walks away in heels, never looking back, while her betrayer crumbles quietly off screen. But the truth is, silence protects the wrong people, and I was done protecting Adam Blake. Why the Fast Company profile detonated louder than I anticipated, not just within fashion tech, but in investor circles, sustainability boards, even academia. Overnight, inboxes I'd once begged to be included in were now forwarding requests for quotes, panels, partnerships. But the email that stopped me came from an address I hadn't seen in years. Subject, Your father would be proud. From Isabel de Rivera, Outlook.com. Date, March 14th, 2025. It was my mother. We hadn't spoken since before I got married. Not out of hate, just estrangement, distance, time. The quiet erosion of conversations that had once been daily, then weekly, then occasional, until even birthdays felt performative. I clicked the email. Camila, I saw the article. I saw your photo. Those cheekbones, that stance. You look just like your father when he closed on his first storefront, except you're bigger than that now. Bigger than I think even he dared to imagine. I've been watching, quietly and selfishly. I have something you might want to see. Come to Miami. I'll explain in person. No emojis. No love you. Just her full name. Like she wasn't sure she still had the right to be my mother. I booked a flight that night. Miami in March felt like stepping into memory. Everything smelled like old money, salt, and sunscreen. Cuban bakeries, hot pavement, the hum of wealth that hadn't needed to prove itself in decades. I hadn't been back in over 6 years. The house was the same. Coral facade, arched windows, a garden too tidy to be natural. She opened the door slowly, like she wasn't sure I'd show. Hi, Mai. She blinked, then hugged me like the years between us hadn't calcified. In the living room, she poured tea we wouldn't drink. I didn't know how to tell you this, she began, unfolding a file folder. Inside, a deed, a trust document, a handwritten note in looping Portuguese I hadn't seen in over a decade. Para minha filha, Camila, se ela ainda quiser, se ela ainda acredita em construir com as mãos limpas. Pedro Eyre, my father. The storefront he'd opened in 1989, a tailor shop in Little Havana, Had been sold after his death, I'd thought. But he'd never sold the building. He'd refinanced, converted, created a private trust in my name that matured in 2025. And now, I owned it. 4 units, ground floor commercial space, in a part of the city being quietly devoured by developers who used words like revitalization to justify displacement. "This is yours," my mother said softly. "He left it to you, not to be liquidated, to be used." I stared at the page, and then I knew. Averta would expand, but not just as a company, as an ecosystem, a lab, a school, a space, a place where girls who didn't go to Ivy League schools could learn to code sustainable fashion logistics, where single mothers could master circularity algorithms, where every employee wore clothes that reflected their values, not just their budget, a foundation, Verda, Raiz, root, because every global vision needs soil somewhere. So I made the announcement at the following month's Impact Capital Summit, not during my keynote, but during the Q&A. A man in a beige blazer had asked something trite. "What's next for Verda?" And I could have listed global expansion, product launches, licensing deals. Instead, I said, "We're opening a permanent site in Miami. The original tailor shop my father founded will become a flagship for Verda Rise, a nonprofit innovation lab for sustainability training. Latin-led, woman-run, built by hands that know what it means to start from scraps." The applause came slow, then rolled, because it wasn't just about scale anymore. It was about inheritance, the kind that isn't financial, but foundational. And just like that, the war shifted. But Adam reached out again, this time through his assistant. Mr. Blake would like to request a meeting to discuss clarification of language used in recent interviews. He believes some statements may imply impropriety or defamation, and he prefers to handle this privately, with mutual respect. The email tried to sound noble, but I heard the panic under the punctuation. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about reputation, about LPs pulling back, about Sloane distancing herself. He wanted to meet privately so I couldn't say publicly what we both knew, that his name on that clause had been deliberate, that his advisory claims were never innocent, that his entire positioning as the ally had been marketing mine. I declined the meeting, but I posted something else, a quiet tweet, no hashtags, just text. When they tell you not to burn bridges, remember, some bridges were built to trap you on their side. It went viral in 12 hours. I met with the Verda Ray's architects the following week. The Miami space was gutted, but the bones were beautiful. Arched windows, concrete floors, brick walls older than me. I walked through with blueprints in hand and vision in my blood. "Put the machines here," I told them, pointing to the east wall. "Sunlight in the morning helps mood and retention. Put the learning pod here. Open walls, round tables, no head of the class. Put the memorial here." They paused. "For who?" "My father," I said, "and every immigrant who sowed a future with hands the world ignored." And the tension started in the details. Missed Slack replies, delayed approvals, a tone shift in weekly syncs that didn't quite rise to defiance, just hesitation. It was subtle, almost polite, but I've lived long enough to know that polite dissent is the beginning of revolt. It came to a head during the quarterly roadmap session. We were in Verda's new office, a glass-walled suite in Soho that smelled of fresh paint and recycled ambition. Light streamed across corkboards filled with mood boards, line charts, and post-it notes coded by initiative. I stood at the front of the main conference room, pitching the integrated expansion model, Verda's e-commerce growth, tied directly to the opening of Verda Rise in Miami. Every piece of inventory we sell in Q3 will fund one apprentice slot, I explained. The consumer journey will include a badge that shows exactly who they're investing in. Radical transparency. Conscious commerce. I paused, waiting for the response. It didn't come. Instead, Olivia, our head of growth, shifted in her chair and raised her hand like we were in a classroom. "Can I speak candidly?" "Yes," I said. "Always." She looked around, exhaled. "This is beautiful," she said carefully. "Inspirational. But it's not scalable. Not yet." A pause. She pressed on. We've got 3 international markets launching, logistics complications from Sao Paulo alone, and now we're asking our customers to also emotionally co-invest in social impact. It splits the funnel. It aligns the funnel, I corrected. It's not just product, Olivia. It's mission. That's always been our edge. But at what cost? She asked. What happens when customers click away because they don't want to fund a scholarship? Or when investors ask why our margins are narrower than in robes? The room went still. That name still echoed like a gunshot. I folded my arms slowly. Enrobe is under investigation. Yes, Olivia replied, and still closed a follow-on round last month. The implication hung heavy. Impact didn't always win. Ethics didn't always close. I'm not questioning your vision, Olivia added. But if Verda becomes more foundation than brand, we lose competitive position, especially with press fading and Q2 targets still unmet. There it was. The quiet fear in every startup. Momentum decay. No matter how big your launch, how loud your headlines, you always start bleeding relevance the moment attention shifts. I looked at my team. 14 faces, each recruited with purpose. Engineers, product designers, operations minds, marketing creatives. Some were nodding, others avoided my eyes. No one challenged Olivia directly, because someone had finally said what they were all thinking, that I might be choosing poetry over profit. I ended the meeting 10 minutes early. No confrontation, no performance. Just, let's pick this back up tomorrow. And that night, I stayed late at the office. Everyone gone. City noise softened behind soundproofed glass. I stood in front of the whiteboard, staring at two diverging branches of our strategic tree. One led to pure growth, product lines, influencer partnerships, retail expansion. Safe, predictable. The other? Legacy. Verda Rise. The apprenticeships. The embedded model that didn't just clothe people. It retrained them. Gave them skills, ownership, new futures. The first would get me funded. The second would make me unforgettable. But could I have both? I FaceTimed Gianna. She answered from her kitchen, hair up, glasses on, her baby's toys scattered across the floor behind her. Camila, remember when we used to fight about monetization pathways? She laughed. You mean every week? Yeah, I think I just walked into that again. Only now the team wears better shoes. She leaned back, serious. What happened? I told her everything. The roadmap, the challenge, the unspoken fear that maybe I was turning Verda into a passion project no one could scale. She listened, quiet, then asked, do you want a company or a cause? I blinked. What? It's not a trap, but it's a choice. If you want a company, you'll have to compromise. Protect your burn rate, play the investor game, pad your margins. That's survival. But if you want a cause, you lead differently. You bet on the long arc. You bleed first. You build what doesn't exist. And maybe it changes everything. I didn't respond. She continued. Neither path is wrong. But if you try to be both without telling your team which one they've signed up for, you'll lose all of them. The next morning, I called an all hands. No slides, no flowcharts, just my voice. I need to own something, I said. When I started Verda, I built it like a company. I wanted to prove that I could scale, raise, compete. I looked around the room. And then I built a cause, a school, a system, a way to redistribute power, not just profit. Several people looked up, visibly startled. I pressed on. Here's the truth. I'm no longer interested in building a company the way men like Adam Blake do. Extractive, scalable, disposable. I want to build a model. One that lasts. One that gives back what it takes. Another pause. This means our roadmap will change. Our marketing will evolve. Our targets will stretch in ways they haven't before. If that makes you nervous, good. That means it matters. Silence. Then Paula, my lead dev, the one who'd stuck through 3 pivots and 2 visa scares, raised her hand. I'm staying, she said simply. Then Jorge, then Lee, then Shay. Even Olivia, after a long moment, nodded. I just needed to hear the plan, she said, and to know we were being led, not just inspired. Pornstay na maitanian that afternoon, I posted a message to Verda's investor portal. Our Q3 strategy will prioritize mission-aligned expansion. This is not a deviation. It's a doubling down on what we were always meant to do. Build a company that proves value doesn't have to come at the expense of values. 2 investors pulled out within 24 hours. 3 more requested 1.1 calls. But I slept better than I had in weeks. Because clarity is leadership. And I hadn't just reclaimed my voice. I'd claimed theirs too. And it started with a ping. Not a headline. Not a lawsuit. Just a soft chime on my laptop. A message from Sarah, our PR director, time-stamped 6:47 a.m. We have a situation. Call me before you check Twitter. I didn't wait. 2 clicks later, the thread was already going viral. Posted by Ahom Truththreader, a known pseudo-anonymous tech whistleblower account that usually amplified startup collapses, toxic founders, and VC hypocrisy. This time, it was me. The tweet was a screenshot of an internal Verta Reyes email dated 3 weeks earlier. Subject line: Scholarship selection, risk matrix, confidential. The body of the email included a chart, exported from a spreadsheet, 3 columns, dozens of names. But what caught fire was the 3rd column: retention risk score. Each applicant had been assigned a number, 1 through 5, based on factors like age, dependent count, prior job history, and education level. The internet exploded. Camila Rivera says she's uplifting vulnerable women, while secretly ranking who's too poor to finish her program. Sustainable fashion with unsustainable ethics. Another founder building equity while profiling the very people she claims to uplift. The post had 32,000 retweets in under 4 hours. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, espresso untouched, the room suddenly cavernous, because I recognized the document. It was real. 9 a.m., we were all on Zoom. Sarah, pale but focused. Jorge from Ops, visibly fuming. Olivia, quiet, typing. Paula just stared at me through the screen. Camila, Sarah said, we need to address this before noon. The longer we let the narrative shape without us, the worse this gets. It's out of context, Jorge added. It was a private tool for resource allocation, not a value judgment. It doesn't matter, Olivia cut in. Public perception isn't about accuracy, it's about story. And right now, the story is that we're hypocrites. Everyone looked at me. Because the truth was, I'd created that matrix. I hadn't coded it, but I'd approved it. Verta Reyes had limited seats in its first cohort. We had funding for 18 apprentices and 43 applicants. I'd asked for a retention risk model to help prioritize the most likely long-term participants. Not to exclude anyone, just to inform. It was never supposed to be seen. It was never supposed to be interpreted as judgment. But intention doesn't always protect impact. At 10:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but I did. Camila Rivera? Yes. This is Talia Chen from Constellation Ventures. Here it comes. We're getting questions from LPs, she said calmly. If you're preparing a statement, we'd like to see it first. I'm not releasing a statement. Pause. I see, Talia said. May I ask why? Because I'm not interested in messaging. I'm interested in truth. Camila, she said gently, this industry doesn't reward transparency. It punishes it. Then let it. That can't. I opened my laptop, opened Instagram, and started typing. When you build something real, it means you're going to get things wrong. And yesterday, I did. The document you saw, it's real. It was created to help us understand how to support our first cohort of apprentices at Verta Reyes. It was designed to inform resource distribution, not to gatekeep opportunity. But intent doesn't erase impact, and I take full responsibility. Because here's the truth. I used the same logic that was used against me. People looked at my profile once and said, she's a risk. Immigrant, female, no Ivy, no seed round. They were wrong, but they had the numbers to justify their decisions. I thought I was being strategic by measuring risk. What I was doing was reenacting a system I claimed to disrupt. So here's what we're doing now. We're removing the matrix, permanently. We're expanding the cohort to include all 43 applicants. We're launching a full audit of our selection process, led by an external ethics board. And I will personally match the gap in funding with my own compensation. I don't want to lead perfectly. I want to lead accountably. That's what Verta was built on. That's what I was built on. To the women whose names appeared on that document, I see you. And you deserve better than systems pretending to help you while secretly fearing you'll fail. I won't be part of that anymore. Camila. The response was unexpected. Within minutes, comments began flooding in. This is how you own a mistake. I felt this in my chest. She didn't hide behind a PR team. I was in that cohort, and I'm crying. I didn't know how close I was to being cut. Some were still brutal. Others were generous. But most were watching to see if I'd flinch, spin, retreat. I didn't. I stayed logged in, replied to as many comments as I could, posted a video 12 hours later from my phone. No makeup, no lighting, no rehearsed script. Just me, explaining, not defending. That night, my mother called. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "Your father once lost half a year's revenue because he refused to overcharge a grieving widow. Everyone said he was foolish, but they remembered that story longer than they remembered his prices." I closed my eyes. "What are people going to remember about you, Fila?" I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. And the next morning, we held a team huddle. I expected tension, hesitation, quiet judgment. Instead, Paula brought coffee. Jorge pulled up the updated application tracker. Olivia handed me a draft for an onboarding redesign, built around equity, not efficiency. "I want us to be better," she said, "but you have to let us help define what that looks like." "I will," I said, and meant it, because leadership isn't always about being right. Sometimes it's about being visible, especially when you're wrong. The call came at midnight, not the polite kind with soft chimes and scheduled reminders. It was abrupt, sharp. Very few people call you at midnight unless something is broken, or someone thinks you're already down. It was Talia Chen, from Constellation Ventures. I answered on the first ring. "Camila," she said, voice steady. "I'm sorry to wake you." "Go ahead," I said, pulling myself upright in the darkness of my apartment. The Miami wind whispered past my window. "Because we've been considering options," she continued. "One of our limited partners has floated a potential acquisition offer for Verta, full purchase. They're putting together a term sheet now. It's a clean exit, strong multiple. They believe you don't need to lead global expansion alone. They believe they can do it faster, with scale, with connections you don't yet have." My heart stilled. I'd known a moment like this would come. It was one of the founding myths of startup life. Take VC until someone wants all of you. But I had always believed there was a moment I'd refuse. That moment was now. "Tell me the terms," I said. They were generous. Valuation, $180 million. Payout, liquidity event, 60% in cash, rest in investor shares. Structure, I'd step into a CEO in residence role for 6 months, then transition. Non-compete, 4 years. Verta, Rise would become an in-house division, but under new leadership. Talia paused as if waiting. "We believe this maximizes value for all stakeholders. Your investors, the team, your mission." My mind raced. I saw the room in Soho, the glass walls, the mood boards, the dreams pinned to corkboards. I saw Verta, Raiz, Gianna's affidavit, the apprenticeship tech stack being coded in sleepless hours. I saw Paula debugging APIs, Jorge coordinating logistics across São Paulo, Olivia refining growth loops. I saw all of them believing in me. I swallowed. "No," I said finally. Talia's sucked breath crackled through the line. "You're refusing $180 million? "Not refusing," I said. "I'm deferring. Because this, what we built, is not a product to be sold. It's a legacy to be grown." "No offense," she replied carefully. "Many founders believe that until their burn rate doubles and their margins collapse. I know that risk," I said, "but I'm willing to take it. Because I'd rather fail as the founder of my own vision than succeed as someone else's acquisition headline." She paused, then sighed. "I respect that. I just wish you'd let me read the term sheet before rejecting it." "You already have," I said. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm not the kind of founder who cashes out early. Not this time." We hung up. My chest burned, but I felt alive, and I walked to the terrace of my apartment. The city lights stretched like circuits below me. The wind tugged at my hair. I stayed there until dawn, planning. By morning, I had a strategy. 1. Counter-offer preemptive, not to sell, but to structure expansion capital. 2. Investor alignment memo. Lay bare the vision, the roadmap, the risks, the exit timeline. 3. Global launch sprint. Select 2 priority markets, Latin America and Southeast Asia, with phased rollouts. 4. Media narrative control. Story not of exit, but of evolution. 5. Darren Stansoro. I called my board, Gianna, legal, Kara Lee, advisory, and 2 independent board members I'd recruited precisely for moments like this. They dialed in. I laid it out. The offer. My refusal. The plan. Silence. Then Kara spoke. "You're burning a bridge others would sprint to cross." "Maybe," I said, "but I have to be the one walking forward." The board debated. Risks, margins, reputational fallout, strategic dilution. But they trusted me, because I had lived with this vision longer than anyone. Because when most founders ask, "What's the exit?" I asked, "What's the impact?" By the end, the board voted unanimously to support the new direction. They would back me, if I could show traction in 12 months in the first 3 international markets. If not, they would revisit offers. Deal accepted. My 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the Allerton Club, the same place where, 7 years ago, I sat nervously waiting for a first investor meeting. The lobby smelled of old marble and ambition. I wore a tailored suit from Verda's pre-launch collection, in deep forest green that still whispered, home. Sloan Vega was there too, arriving from her own PR event. She spotted me, paused, offered that practiced smile. I walked over. "Camila," she said, "you drew a hard line." "Yes," I said. "I did." She hesitated. "The offer on Verda was impressive." "I countered with expansion capital," I replied, "and I'll lead it." Her eyes flickered. She nodded. "I admire that. Most founders cash out at your stage. Most aren't building with a conscience." I smiled. "Luck is an investment in belief." We shook hands. No small talk. Just 2 women with overlapping stories. Back at the office, I announced to the company, "We've had a full acquisition offer. We rejected it." "Why?" "Because we're not for sale. We are scaling. We are evolution. We are legacy." Silence. Then cheers. Then tears. Then commitment. Later that day, emails from global leads flew in. Japan, Mexico, Nigeria. Requests for partnership, licensing, logistics. I replied to all personally. Then I posted to LinkedIn. Today, we chose direction over exit, because when a founder falls, she falls for everyone she carries, and I carry every line I ever dreamed of drawing. Then that night, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "How did it go?" "I declined an acquisition," I said. "But it wasn't out of pride. It was because I'm not done." She whispered. "Your father never sold his building either." We didn't need more. We understood each other again. When in the dark, I walked through the Miami property, the storefront, the red brick rooms, the foundation site. I pictured classrooms, makers' benches, collaborative labs. I whispered, "This is ours. Not just mine. Yours. Theirs. All of us." And in that moment, I felt it. The first tremor of the next shift. They believed in me when I was unnamed. They built with me when the world ignored me. Now, I walked forward. Not as a founder with an exit plan, but as a founder with a purpose. Because some offers are too tempting to refuse, and some legacies are too fragile to sell. As the plane descended into Bogotá at dawn, the Andes peaks sliced light through the windows like shards of possibility. The city below was a patchwork of color. Red rooftops, river veins, unexpected greenery. I pressed my forehead against the glass, tasting the altitude and the electric tension of entering a new frontier. Expansion was never just about geography. It was about translation. Values translated across systems. Ambitions translated across cultures. Trust rebuilt from scratch. My team had arrived hours before me. Logistics staff, localization leads, operations heads. We rented a co-working space in Chapinero and installed servers, local warehousing, and a skeletal staff. We had local hires speaking Spanish, Portuguese, English. The plans felt suddenly fragile, like lines drawn in shifting sand. On my second day in Bogotá, I visited a warehouse in Soacha, outskirts where land was cheaper, rent lower, but infrastructure weaker. Pallets of raw textiles sat under tarps, forklifts in need of repair, the smell of damp cement, the heat-warping boxes. It was imperfect, but real. I spent hours walking the floor with Esther, head of Latin America operations, who explained supply chain gaps, customs delays, import tariffs, and local labor laws. "Camila, the challenge is trust," she said, wiping sweat. "In Bogotá, relationships matter as much as numbers. We have to adjust our pulse." I nodded, but our code remains the same. Later that evening, back at the co-working site, I held a launch dinner with local influencers, community leaders, and prospective brand ambassadors. The energy was intoxicating. Laughter across wine glasses, spontaneous toasts, curious glances at Verda samples in natural fibers, Colombian silks, Andean weaves reimagined into tech-enabled wearables. When the press photographers came, I felt the frame reorient. Camila Rivera, the founder who refused to exit, now entering Latin America. The headlines would read, "Verda debuts Bogotá office," or "Sustainability goes local, Verda in Colombia." I should have felt triumph. but a tremor awaited. On day 4, my inbox pinged, "We need to talk. Urgent. Local lead, Bogotá, iverda.co." I ignored it until after dinner. Then I clicked. Attached. Internal budget spreadsheets, vendor contracts, and an Excel sheet flagged in bright red. Commission overrun, 47%. Vendor invoices exceeded estimates. Local personnel costs way above forecast. Freight expenses undisclosed in forecast. The team in Bogotá had begun redirecting orders to third-party carriers outside our approved network at premiums as high as 35%. Some leads were being paid to secure access to regions we hadn't authorized. I sat on the floor of my temporary apartment, bolts of dread unspooling in my chest. Betrayal tastes cold. I called Esther immediately. She answered after 3 rings. "What's going on?" I asked. Silence. Then a rush of words. "Camila, I didn't know these were approved." Local lead started reallocating orders. He said it was urgent to meet demand and preserve margin. He told me it was temporary. He'd reconcile everything. I trusted him. I closed my eyes. "How big is temporary?" She hesitated. $120,000 over budget in 48 hours, and some contracts signed with no oversight. The local carrier is charging in cash. Receipt trails are weak. My throat clenched. "And the Excel sheet?" The red columns. "A preliminary risk assessment. I flagged them for review, but he told me to hold off until after we launch." I inhaled. "Don't confront him yet. Don't shut anything down abruptly. We need evidence. Reconcile everything. Match invoices to receipts. Audit the chain local to Bogotá." Her sob broke through. "I'm sorry. I believed he was protecting the mission." The word protecting stabbed me, because mission didn't protect itself. And that night, I lay in the dark, replaying trust. All the times I'd trusted people because they looked like me, spoke like me, were supposed to believe like me. All the times I mistook promise for competence. But you learn, the hard way, that betrayal is not personal. It's business. Recognize the pattern, not the person. By morning, I had a plan. I flew to Bogotá ahead of schedule. In the conference room of the co-working space, I asked for a full local team meeting. European windows, timber floor, fluorescent overheads. Everyone there. The Bogotá team, operations staff, logistics, localization. They sat in rows, phones off, eyes wary. I opened a shared deck. Yesterday I saw numbers that didn't reconcile. I saw commissions paid, margins manipulated, orders rerouted. That's not oversight. That's redirection. We're a new team together. We fail with transparency or not at all. Local lead slipped into the back row. I watched him shift. I continued. I've asked the team to freeze shipments outside the approved network, to halt commission payments until reconciliation, to bring every contract and invoice to headquarters for audit. I will review personally. Anyone who attempted to exploit this expansion channel intentionally is out. No grace, no exceptions. Then I added, and everyone who uncovered or reported this is protected. No retribution. None. That's non-negotiable. Esther stepped forward. I've worked nights reconciling line items. I have flagged names. I will submit everything by tomorrow morning. I nodded. Good. Let's rebuild from accountability, not denial. Hands raised. Questions asked. Explanations given. The local lead remained silent. At the end, I looked at him. You'll get a chance to answer, but I won't wait long. This kind of leak in a frontier market can kill trust faster than any bank collapse. The next morning, I walked the warehouse floor again. Pallets sealed, packaging inspected, security cameras reviewed. I oversaw manual reconciliation. I called Manila operations to see if this was a one-off or pattern. We found faint echoes of similar anomalies, smaller sums, same tactics, in preliminary market entry tests. This was a pattern, a behavior built into risk. I called a press contact. But before that, I sent a brief internal update. Yesterday, we uncovered misaligned execution in Bogotá. We are conducting full audit, suspending unauthorized transactions, and rebuilding from accountability. Transparency is not optional. It is our foundation. Then I sat down for the interview. No spin, no evasions. At lunch, local lead asked for a meeting. I accepted. He arrived 10 minutes later, face pale, voice shaky. I only did what I thought would preserve margins. He began. You preserved something, I said coldly, but not trust. He looked at the floor. You're removing people? Yes, I said. If evidence confirms intentional redirection or misrepresentation. But first, we review. Then we act." He nodded, defeated. I stood. "You may step out while we audit. Until then, your projects are paused." He lingered, then left. And that evening, I addressed the Bogotá staff. Expansion isn't just about bringing a brand across borders. It's about exporting values. And values are fragile. They must be guarded. Because once trust fractures, you don't just rebuild walls. You rebuild reputations. There were whispers, tears, renewed loyalties. Some turned away. Some stepped closer. I dismissed the meeting. Later, I emailed the board and investors. Bogotá revealed a fault line. I take full responsibility. But we will not hide. We will not deflect. We will correct. Publicly, decisively, transparently. I slept few hours. But I slept organic, not staged. Because every frontier will test you. But how you respond, that's your signature. Singapore rose before me in the pre-dawn light. A constellation of towers, waterways, and promise. The city looked like someone had remixed Tokyo and Dubai. Clean, bold, futuristic, intent. I disembarked onto the tarmac thinking, if Verda becomes global, this is its pulse. After Bogotá's betrayal, I felt scarred but sharpened. My eyes were open to the fault lines that lurk in expansion, not just in systems and shipping lanes, but in culture, trust, and hidden loyalties. Singapore, with its mix of cultures, regulations, and prestige, would be my test. NUS landing and setup. The initial days felt electric. We set up a flagship operations hub in Marina Bay. Light, glass, open ceilings, the kind of space that spoke of ambition. Local teams flew in. Logistics leads from Malaysia, fashion technologists from Indonesia, a small base in Singapore to act as our Asia logistics nexus. I flew across to trade fairs, met makers, textile engineers, and sustainability NGOs. At one event in Tanjong Pagar, I wore the arrival look from my keynote, translated into an Asian silk blend in Honshu green. The crowd watched me stride between booths, and investors eyed me as a founder of a company that might actually cross continents. During a late dinner at Clark Quay with 3 local investors, I pitched the Singapore SE Asia strategy. Logistics ring through Malaysia, small showrooms in Seoul and Jakarta, using Singapore as the anchor brand nucleus. When one of them asked, "What happens if local tastes clash with your identity?" I answered, "We do not impose Verda. We co-create it." Asia will not be the same as Latin America. That's the point. Our values, not our uniformity, are our strength. They nodded slowly, and a seed of doubt. But within a week, fissures began. It started with a subtle shift in tone. A few emails in local vernacular that weren't fully translated to me. A vendor in Johor complaining of delayed payments. A warehouse in Batam that hadn't synchronized with Singapore's inventory systems. Then an unexpected message from Lynn, head of APAC partnerships. Someone I'd recruited personally because of her regional insight, her network, and her loyalty to Verda's mission. "Camila, I want to flag something before you hear it secondhand." My stomach tightened. She told me she'd found irregularities in a contract signed with a jewels boutique, a partner showroom in Kuala Lumpur. The commission terms shifted after my approval, and a supplier clause removed the audit clause we'd insisted on in Singapore standards. I stared. This was a betrayal not of logistics, but of principle. I called Lynn immediately. She answered, voice quiet, but determined. I tried to catch it earlier, but they said it was an executive decision from the local team. The terms had been aligned internally before my review. I closed my eyes. Show me the versions. All drafts, emails, red lines, everything. She said she'd send them by the hour. The confrontation in the corridor. The following afternoon, at our Singapore hub, I walked into the meeting room where Lynn and 2 local leads waited. The glass walls of the room offered a panorama of the skyline, a view that felt too expensive to waste. I laid out the documents, the redlined contract, the email threads shifting commission percentages, the missing audit clause, the local team's response. We believed adjustments were necessary to stay competitive. I closed the folder. Let me be crystal. No adjustments, no beliefs, not without transparency, not without oversight, not within Verda. One of the local leads, eyes steady but voice shaking, said, "We thought you'd accept flexibility. You built us to scale. We're just trying to do what you taught. Adapt." I shook my head. Flexibility without integrity is the path to loss. You were trusted to align, not reinvent terms behind closed doors. There was silence. the quiet weight of recognition and shame. I stepped back. I don't believe in public trials. I believe in accountability. You will pause that contract. We will reissue it with correct terms. We will audit the partner's financing. And anyone who signed it, knowing it violated our standards, will be removed. They swallowed. I turned. The cultural tightrope. After that confrontation, I sensed two reactions in the hub. Quiet respect from team members who had resisted the changes, but didn't feel empowered to speak until someone did. Cold distance from those who sided with local expedience, decision made behind my back. Later, I sat with Lynn in an empty corner kitchenette. I didn't want to drag you into this, she said softly. You've already carried so much. You had to. I built Verta so we'd never have silent complicity. You did the right thing. We sat a moment, watching forklift lights flicker outside windows. In Asia, the tension between appearance and truth can be magnified. The rule is often harmony, not confrontation, but mission demands rupture. Sometimes you disrupt harmony to preserve what's right. I told Lynn, I won't punish you for truth. I will protect you. We'll walk this together, region by region. She nodded, tears in her eyes. A public statement, private resolve. That evening, I drafted an announcement for Verta's APAC launch, including a caveat. We've encountered growing pains. We believe in integrity over expedience. As we scale, each market will adapt, but never at the cost of our core values. We will review all contracts. We will not be blind to our own inconsistencies. I scheduled the tweet for midnight Singapore time. At 00:03, I pressed post. The words went out across hours and continents. In the hours that followed, a few investors in Singapore DMs said, it's bold, risky, but needed. Some partners texted support. Some local media began parsing the conflict. The narrative spread not just as a launch, but a show of integrity under pressure. Night walks and reflection. I walked the Marina Bay promenade beneath the skyscraper lights. Gardens by the bay shimmered across the water. The city was quiet. My mind loud. I reflected on everything. Bogotá's betrayal, the leak, the Singapore misstep. Each one a test not of strength, but of character. Because global expansion is not conquest. It's conversation. It's listening. It's humility. But humility must be anchored by standards. You don't bend values to scale. You scale through values. Under the city lamps, I whispered promises to myself. I will not allow expansion to dilute integrity. I will not permit shortcuts in the name of speed. I will lead not just by ambition, but by accountability. Wayne. Aftermath and resolve. The following morning, I convened the full APAC team. No slides, no flourish, just words. We face culture as deeply as markets. Betrayals aren't always loud. They're often whispered. Altered contracts, hidden clauses, silent deviations. We must surface them, confront them, correct them, and do so swiftly. I paused. Lynn brought an issue to light. I commend her courage. That kind of loyalty matters more than any pet contract. We will walk this path together, but with eyes open. Heads nodded, some faces moist with relief, some shame mingled with resolve. I closed. We are not flawless. We will err, but we will not hide. We will respond, again and again. That morning's sunlight felt too gentle for what was coming. In New York, Bogotá, and Singapore, the air seemed quieter, as though the world held its breath. But beneath that hush, something massive was shifting. A counteroffer was forming across dark rooms and polished conference tables, one that would compel me to pivot from defense to offense. The Nenli, the message you don't want to receive. I was in my apartment in Singapore, preparing for a live stream conversation with a sustainability forum, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, and no pickup allowed. A text. Take a look at this. You're going to want to respond. T. Attached was a PDF link titled Confidential Verta Acquisition Counterplan. I opened it. Every page felt like someone had peeled back my skin. It bore a term sheet, like the one Talia had floated before, but worse. Non-compete, 8 years globally. Founder role, advisory only, no operational control. Retention clause, if revenue dips 10% within 2 years, clause triggers default takeover. Settlement fine. If I speak publicly against their plans, I'm liable for $50 million. At the bottom, signature line awaiting my acceptance. I closed the file. My pulse raced. This wasn't an offer. It was a cage. Then I checked who'd sent it. Talia? No. A burner email from Constellation's legal shell company. I hung up the forum host's call just before going live. Sorry. Connection issues. I lied. Then booked the flight back to Singapore HQ. Board call in 12 hours. Back at my desk, I assembled my board, Gianna, Kara, and the 2 independents, on a video call across time zones. They just sent me this, I said, sharing my screen. We scrolled clause by clause. Silence. This, Kara finally said, is hostile takeover by contract. Gianna nodded. It's an assault on agency, on voice. If you sign this, Verta dies as your legacy. We talked numbers, rumors, what LPs had been murmuring quietly, which VC alliances were fragile, which would flip if they thought I'd capitulated. And then I said, I refuse. I will make them rescind this, and I will take my offense to the public square. They asked how. I told them. 1. Counter-publication. A white paper revealing the board's rights, my vision, and the betrayal clause. 2. Ally alliance. Recruit partner founders, media embassies, global incubators. 3. Escalation trigger. An open letter in Fast Company and Bloomberg, naming the offensive offer. 4. Operational autonomy. Commit capital to retain control of Singapore and Bogotá, regardless of outside pressure. They agreed. Strategic repositioning. Over the next 48 hours, the world shifted. I scrapped the live stream. I drafted the white paper. I emailed dozens of founders, in Indonesia, in Mexico, in South Africa, asking for backing. I told them, if they take away my voice, your voice is next. I engaged a media team to pre-place the open letter. I met with Talia, supposedly for a clarification talk. I made it clear, play or withdraw. No middle ground. She smiled, calm, like she was used to pressure. You're overestimating your reach, she said. You're underestimating what a founder betrayed can build, I replied. Noon the reveal. The morning I released the white paper, the tech and startup world shifted. Headlines. Founder under attack. Verta's coercive buyout term sheet leaked. VC power play or coup. Inside the clause that could strip control from the founder. Women founders hit back against hostile takeover tactics. Investors called. Forum invitations came. Tweets blazed. The open letter ran simultaneously in Fast Company, TechCrunch, Wired. In it, I detailed the original acquisition offer I had rejected, the counter-term sheet that would have gagged me and vaulted control, my decision to fight, not fold, a commitment. Verta would remain independent, a living model, not a liquidation target. The reaction was electric. Then alliance and escalation. That afternoon, a dozen female founders backed me publicly. I stand with Camila. Some venture funds issued support statements. At least 2 limited partners threatened to pull from the hostile acquisition vehicle if it went through. On Twitter, micro-newsletters dissected the clauses. Panels were scheduled. Media asked for commentary. The fight had become symbolic. Not just Verta's future, but the rights of founders who resist being bought off. In Singapore, I convened my APAC staff. We streamed the open letter to their screens in the conference room. We never asked for a fight, but this one chose us, I told them. We stand today not because it's easy, but because what we build must outlast pressure, because agency isn't negotiable. Hands nodded. Some teared, some clenched. We stood as one. The counterstrike. Over the next week, I traveled again. Bogotá before Singapore. In Colombia, I signed new partnerships and announced expansion into Medellin. I neutralized the narrative that Verta was distracted. Back in Singapore, I launched a campaign, My Vision, My Voice. Short videos by founders who'd refused acquisition, who demanded co-founder control, who fought for mission over margin. I published an op-ed across global media. Why founders must own their narratives, even when they're forced to fight for them. Investors lined up on calls. One of the firms behind the hostile term sheet backed out. Apparently LP pushback was real. One VC called me. Camila, I've never seen a founder so public and powerful. I said, they tried to stake a claim on silence. I refused to pay rent in their voice. Aftermath and positioning. 3 weeks later, I stood on stage at a Pan-Asia summit as keynote. I wore look 3, arrival in a Singapore silk variant. The crowd was electric. Cameras flashed. My speech wasn't about success. It was about sovereignty. We are not assets to be managed. We are architects of culture, of equity, of futures. When you see a clause that silences, expose it. When you feel pressure to mute your message, amplify it. Because power is not transfer, it's assertion. Later, a journalist asked if I ever considered taking their term sheet. I smiled. It wasn't an offer. It was a threat. And threats diminish when you stand tall. And by dawn, Singapore's skyline looked like a giant cage, steel and glass rising toward the clouds. Each tower a reminder that even brilliance can be hemmed in. As I stepped into the Verda APAC hub that morning, I sensed something wrong. Tension, hushed voices, the weight of silence. The first email came at 8:02 a.m., flagged, urgent, legal, from Constellation's counsel. Dear Ms. Rivera, please be advised that the hostile term sheet you publicly decried invokes Clause 14.9, an emergency injunction to freeze operational control until arbitration. Effective immediately, we demand your cooperation or risk direct enforcement. Your affiliates and international divisions worldwide may be affected. I stared at those words. Freeze operational control, international divisions, risk enforcement. The threat was precise, targeted, chilling. My heart hammered. This was bigger than Bogotá, bigger than Singapore. This was a legal straitjacket meant to dismantle everything we'd fought to preserve. Board and legal mobilization. I called an emergency board call. On the screen, faces from 3 continents, framed by worry and resolve. Gianna leaned forward. They're trying to strangle the life out of your control. Freeze your voice, freeze your power, freeze your expansion. Kara's jaw pressed tight. They believe they can starve a vision into surrender. One independent board member asked, "What legal path do we have?" Carla joined seconds later, already primed. We file immediate counter-motions, request emergency relief, engage jurisdictional defenses. We argue that their term sheet is unenforceable under Singapore's founder protection statutes and U.S. contract law. Simultaneously, we file for temporary restraining order in Colombia, U.S., and Singapore. I nodded. Parallel fronts. No retreat. And we must keep public pressure so they can't quietly coup the narrative. And global legal theater. In Bogotá, we prepared motion filings to contest any action on Verda Rays and our Latin markets. We enlisted local co-counsel experienced in IP, corporate, and cross-border injunctions. In Singapore, we engaged top litigators with multi-jurisdictional expertise. We drafted briefs arguing that any freezing order violates our founding agreements, the fiduciary duties of shareholders, and public interest. We demanded a hearing. In New York, we filed for declaratory relief. We pushed for injunctive support from U.S. courts. We warned that attempting to enforce against our U.S. operations would invite jurisdictional challenge and reputational backlash. All the while, I continued to lead operations, publicly denying any freeze. I refused to cede ground. Press storm and activism. I released a short video across Verda's channels. If they believe they can silence me with legal threat, they are mistaken. The barricade they build in ink will be burned by resolve. We will not consent to submission. We choose action, not abdication. The video went viral. Founder under legal siege became headline. Press asked for interviews. Panelists decried the abuse of term sheets as weapons. Several venture funds publicly defended me. Founders' networks offered support statements, fundraising solidarity, pro bono counsel. I watched as the legal threat tried to cage me, and the world opened doors. Internal resilience and morale. I flew to Bogotá first. The local team was restless. Will we lose our autonomy? Some asked. Others feared layoffs, freeze, loss of shipping chains. I met with them in a converted meeting room with bare walls. No, I said. They are trying to freeze control, not stop progress. We will litigate. We will fight. We will continue operations. And we will strengthen every line of defense. Your access, your autonomy, your voice. Faces softened. Tension eased. I promised transparency. We scheduled daily litigation updates and small team huddles so no one felt disconnected from the fight. And hearing day. In Singapore's High Court, we presented our arguments. I sat behind Carla and our legal team, watching as they dismantled the opposing counsel's attempt to brand us as destabilizing. I listened as our judges grilled the hostile offer, questioning its fairness, enforceability, jurisdictional overreach, and the founder's rights. 2 bombshell moments stood out. 1. Our counsel produced multiple signed affidavits from Colombian and Singaporean operations, showing that the company had never agreed to freezing control in the case of public conflict. 2. We revealed the counter-term sheet with the $50 gag fine clause, proving their attempt was not mere negotiation, but trap. The court recoiled. After 7 hours, the judge issued a temporary restraining order, preventing any enforcement of the freeze clause, at least until arbitration and full hearings. The term sheet clause was blocked, operations could proceed, and our control was legally preserved. For now. I exhaled, but I didn't relax. Strategic reorganization and reaffirmation. We called a global all-hands via live stream. I addressed every Verda team worldwide. They tried to freeze us. They failed. We remain active. And from this moment forward, we will reorganize defenses, expand transparently, and let this attempt strengthen, not break, our foundation. We are living proof that mission demands resistance. We launched Project Phoenix, an internal initiative to redundantly codify governance safeguards, operation autonomy across regions, public oversight scripts, and legal war rooms ready in every jurisdiction. I personally emailed key investors, not PR teams or assistants. I just defended our control in Singapore court. The attempt to silence me has become the fight we win. I will not be bought off. I will not be boxed in. If you want to pull back, please tell me. But if you want to stand beside this, now is the time. Several responded. Stand strong. We're with you. Memory, rebirth, and legacy. That night, I lay in the Singapore apartment, light still on, city pulsing outside. I thought of my father, how he stabilized his small shop in Miami through storms, recession, doubt. I thought of my mother and the trust she quietly preserved for years, even in silence. And I thought of all the founders before me who were extinguished by silent clauses, by quiet takeovers, by systems that expected them to fold. I whispered to myself, they tried to freeze me, but I am not ice. I am fire. And from this trial, we will reignite with unmistakable light. O alvorecer em Bogotá era silencioso como expectativa. Às 5h30 da manhã, eu já estava de pé, percorrendo os corredores vazios do centro de operações. O ar tinha aquela mistura de umidade e concreto quente, lembrança da fortaleza onde cresci, lembrança de raízes que se sustentavam sob pressão. Agora, estávamos no limiar da virada final. Os ecos legais haviam nos dado fôlego, mas não vitória. A vitória exigiria alianças políticas, parcerias regionais e uma guinada narrativa impossível de ignorar. E sin netanons, reativando diplomas invisíveis. A primeira tarefa do dia era me reunir com Maria del Carmen, ministra do Desenvolvimento Econômico da Colômbia, uma aliada ambiental que eu havia conhecido por meio de uma ONG global no ano anterior. Combinei o encontro para 8h, em seu escritório no distrito de La Candelaria. Paredes de jacarandá, luz indireta, janelas que davam para um pátio interno com coqueiros silenciosos. Quando entrei, ela sorriu, cansada, mas firme. Camila, ela disse, falaram que está sob ataque. Estou triste por ouvir isso, mas não surpreso. Abracei rápido, senti o peso das ausências penduradas no abraço. Sentamos. Café colombiano amargo, água mineral, escritoras pioneiras enfeitavam a mesa. Ela falou primeiro. Você é um símbolo para mulheres empreendedoras em toda a América Latina. Se te derrubarem por cláusulas escritas em inglês que ninguém viu, perderemos não só um negócio, perderemos exemplo de que nossas vozes importam. Pedi apoio formal, que o governo garantisse, nas licitações públicas de vestuário urbano, como uniformes escolares sustentáveis, fardas corporativas para órgãos públicos, pelo menos 20% de preferência para fornecedores certificados ambientalmente por Verda e similares. Que entidades de crédito estatal liberassem linhas de financiamento para moda circular e empreendimentos sustentáveis. Que se pronunciasse oficialmente contra cláusulas abusivas em contratos estrangeiros que intentam abafar controle local. Ela ponderou, tocou documentos no iPad, fechou os olhos. Você sempre exerce poder com propósito. Eu farei isso, mas você precisa me mostrar que sua expansão não será neocolonialismo, que é cocriação, não imposição. Mostrei o mapa da Lab Verda, Raiz, as cofábricas em Medellín, os laboratórios locais em Singapura com designers locais, bolsas regionais, curadoria local. Ela sorriu. Faço ao menos uma declaração hoje. E converso com o presidente. Saí do gabinete com um peso menos sobre mim. Minhas parcerias diplomáticas. À tarde, já em Bogotá, convoquei um café de liderança com líderes empresariais da América Latina, presidentes de associações de moda sustentável, câmaras digitais, centros de inovação social. Pedi que cada um trouxesse um pedido que eles sentiam ser bloqueado ou silenciado. Queria construir coalizão. As falas foram poderosas. Rocio, líder de uma rede de cooperativas têxteis no Peru, falou sobre contratos governamentais que penalizavam práticas sustentáveis por custos altos. Diego, CEO de logística verde no Chile, relatou que portos locais impunham tarifas extras a containers com matérias-primas recicladas. Marisol, fundadora de uma marca indígena no Equador, disse como investidores estrangeiros insistiram em cláusulas escritas em inglês que neutralizavam jurisdição local. Juntar essas vozes gerou um pacto informal. No próximo evento, Região Moda em Sustentabilidade 2025, faríamos uma leitura pública da Declaração de Autonomia Fundadora Sustentável, exigindo cláusulas justas, direito local sobre negócios locais, reputação atrelada ao controle ético e salvaguardas para fundadores. Eu pediria para ser a primeira signatária. Antes de ir para Singapura, enviei esboço da declaração ao meu time jurídico internacional. Eles afinaram linguagem, cânones de direitos humanos, cláusulas protetivas. O plano: simultaneamente lançar no palco, global e local. Preparativos finais em Singapura. Voltei a Singapura para organizar o que seria o capítulo final da virada. O céu noturno refletia na baía como um espelho. Metálico, pacífico, potente. O mês de maio iniciava. Na sede da Verda APAC, iluminada e estratégica, convidei equipe local, parceiros estratégicos, imprensa, investidores regionais e algumas figuras-chave governamentais do Sudeste Asiático. No foyer, folhetos estampados com Declaration of Founders Autonomy foram distribuídos. Versões em inglês, malaio, indonésio, mandarim, coreano. O evento seria híbrido, presencial plus livestream. Nos bastidores, cada cofundador aliado europeu, americano, latino, assinou em pinpad digital. Cada fundador que se sentia ofendido por cláusulas ou por aquisição, firmou também, enviando vídeos de apoio. Nos ensaios da noite, eu treinava o discurso final. Caminhava no palco para memorizar o momento exato de revelar a declaração nas grandes telas. A provocação pública. No dia do evento, o centro de conferências Marina Bay estava lotado. Painéis sobre moda circular, blockchain de cadeia e a têxtil. Eu falaria por volta das 17h30, encerrando. A transmissão já era esperada por centenas de milhares online. Entregaram meu microfone. O backstage estava quieto. Olhei para a sala espelhada atrás do palco. Corpo de luz, rostos cobrindo fileiras, pessoas com camisetas Verda e hashtags. Era a hora. Entrei. Quando o moderador me apresentou, aplaudiram. Eu esperei silêncio. Quando se constrói algo para durar, é inevitável que apareçam mãos que tentem usurpar controle, que tentem limitar voz. Eu falei mais devagar do que nos treinos. Cláusulas abusivas, ofertas hostis, tentativas de congelar operações. Esses são os métodos invisíveis da resistência ao poder legítimo. A sala ficou ainda mais silenciosa. Então, clique. Minha apresentação trouxe a Declaração de Autonomia Fundadora Sustentável, em fonte grande na tela central. Nós, fundadores de empresas que constroem com propósito, exigimos: 1. Que contratos internacionais não sejam jurisdição unilateral. 2. Que cláusulas de aquisição não possam silenciar fundadores com multas exorbitantes. 3. Que legislações locais protejam o direito de controle do fundador nas operações em seu país. 4. Que investidores sejam responsáveis por respeitar cultura, integridade e missão. 5. Que lideranças fundadoras sejam empoderadas, não extintas. Eu segurei o momento. Permiti que o aplauso crescesse. Os moderadores estenderam o tempo. Alguns ficaram de pé. A cobertura ao vivo mudou de painel técnico para momento histórico. Eu continuei. Esta declaração não é uma pétala jogada ao vento. É um marco. Um espelho para quem acha que inovação pode ser imposta, não cultivada. Se ousarem congelar minha voz, verão que não me calarão. Porque não sou apenas uma fundadora. Sou guardiã das linhas que desenhei, e estas linhas, de propósito, controle e legado, serão respeitadas ou recusadas. No fim, ovacionaram de pé. Palavras circulavam nas telas. Tweets pipocavam. Fundadores comentavam em live streams. Pubuaneonde. A consequências imediatas. Horas depois, a imprensa regionais e globais publicaram notas. Camila Rivera lança pacto de autonomia fundadora. Cláusulas hostis em contratos. Por que fundadores estão reagindo agora? Verda sobe nas bolsas de reputação. Como resistência virou estratégia. Os governos que haviam sido contatados começaram a comentar. Na Colômbia, ministra postou: apoio à iniciativa de fortalecer o protagonismo local de fundadores. Na Malásia, um parceiro tecnológico mencionou colaboração justa, visibilidade mútua, respeito por identidade local. No LinkedIn e Twitter, alianças surgiram. Outros fundadores compartilharam cláusulas que atuaram como armadilhas. Instituições jurídicas começaram a pedir debates públicos sobre contratos padronizados de aquisição. Investidores chamaram reuniões. Alguns negociaram back-off da cláusula de gag fine do termo hostil. Alguns propuseram novos termos para ambições futuras. O tom mudou. O jogo mudou. The sun had not yet risen over Marina Bay when I climbed the final set of stairs to the rooftop terrace of the Verda APAC headquarters. Singapore's skyline was still a silhouette. Towers like silent sentinels bathed in pre-dawn softness. Below, the city stirred. Above, I stood alone, surrounded by wind, glass, and memory. It was where I always drafted my clearest thoughts. I held the Declaration of Autonomy Fundadora Sustentável in my hands, the final version, signed by founders, leaders, legal counsels across continents. The weight of it felt heavier than any term sheet ever offered to me. This was the document not just of survival, but of sovereignty. The last 14 chapters had led me here. Bogotá's betrayal, the leak, Singapore's fault lines, the hostile counteroffer, the legal freeze, the war in public narrative. Now, the moment of ascension. It's the dawn of the verdict. At 9 a.m., in Singapore's High Court, the judges returned to the bench. The courtroom was packed. Press, legal teams, investors, founders live streaming from distant cities. On their faces, curiosity, caution, the kind of weight that precedes decision. Carla's voice trembled slightly as she delivered our closing argument. How the counter-term sheet's gag fine clause was unconscionable. How the freeze clause violated multiple jurisdictions' founder protection doctrines. How recognizing the Declaration of Autonomy sent a message not just to me, but to every founder in every market. I watched across the glass wall as opposing counsel attempted damage control. Their posture collapsed over hours of dismantling. Then the verdict. Injunction granted. Control preserved, enforcement denied, until arbitration. The court also recognized, in a first-of-its-kind ruling, the principle that oppressive acquisition clauses that intend to silence a founder may be invalidated in favor of preserving operational autonomy. When the gavel struck, the courtroom erupted in applause. Founders cheered, lawyers exhaled. I leaned forward, heart pounding, tears of relief and resolution in my eyes. On a cross-continental victory. Broadcast. Minutes later, I walked out of the courtroom into the lobby. Reporters surged. Flashbulbs, microphones, international press. I raised my hand. Today is not just a victory for me. It's a victory for every founder who's been told that control is negotiable, that their voice is optional, that mission is mutable. We have proven. You can refuse exit without silence. You can resist takeover without collapse. You can build sanctuary, not just enterprise, and still prevail. In Bogotá, the team phoned me, cheers echoing through their call. In Miami, the site for Verda Raiz lit up. In New York, investors retweeted statements. My mother called. She sobbed one word, Brava. The first day of new rules. That afternoon, I went directly to the Singapore APAC hub. The staff gathered. Their faces reflected relief, pride, exhaustion. I told them, we won back control, but our real work begins now. We must institutionalize autonomy, contracts, oversight, co-governance. We scale with citizenship, not conquest. We grow with roots, not rot. We launched autonomy protocols, an internal audit system across all regions, regional boards with partial governance, annual founder review rights. every local team would now have voice in governance. Every region's data, operations, and finances segregated enough to prevent opaque takeover. By dusk, I sat with Ling, Singapore operations lead, Esther, Bogotá, Gianna, legal, Olivia, growth, a council of battle-scarred generals. We toasted with jasmine tea and sustainable mocktails. We swore, silently, that this would be our new era of rise without surrender. Epistolary reckoning. Later that evening, I drafted an open letter to the entrepreneur community to be published at midnight across global platforms. To every founder who's whispered their value behind arm's-length contracts, who's been told to wait, to yield, to exit quietly, know this: your voice is not vestigial. Your mission is your right. Ownership is not a reward. It is the frontier of purpose. And today, a precedent stands. Autonomy cannot be bought in silence. Camila Rivera, founder and protector of Verda. We released it at exactly 000 Singapore time. The responses poured in. Startups, incubators, lawyers, founder networks, all signaling resonance, alliance, relief, reflections in quiet light. That night, I returned to the rooftop terrace, where the city lights mirrored constellation patterns. I held the declaration document, now laminated, framed, symbolic, and real. I thought of my 10 younger founders who'd signed their names on it, those who'd messaged me privately. Because you fought, now I feel I can ask for control. Those who shared their own stories of exit pressure, clauses buried in acquisition bids, disclosures written only in English. I thought of Bogotá's betrayals, Singapore's shifts, legal fights that left me raw and alive. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, felt wind on my face. The lines of ambition and integrity had collided within me. The price was nearly everything, but the currency was worth paying. An epilogue, the new landscape. In the months that followed, Verda launched in 3 new countries, Portugal, Ghana, Malaysia, using the autonomy protocol. The declaration became a movement. Legal bodies in Colombia and Singapore proposed caps on gag fine clauses, founder protections embedded in new legislation. Verda Rise expanded, 120 apprentices across 4 continents, each cohort developing local design labs, supply chains, social enterprises. Investors renegotiated new terms with autonomy clauses for founders. VC consortia funded legal defense funds for founders fighting acquisition pressure. The hostile acquisition vehicle behind my counteroffer quietly withdrew. Several of the funds involved restructured. I never met Talia in the same room again, but headlines showed she pivoted toward sustainable investing publicly. Me? I flew to Miami. I walked into my father's building, the one I'd inherited. I touched the coral brick, the windows I remembered as a child. I thought, his legacy flows through me, his fight, mine. The building was quiet, except for the hum of AC. I sat in that storefront room, took out art pads, began sketching lines for a community workshop space, an incubator for Latin women in circular fashion. At dusk, I sent one text. We still have room in the first cohort. Do you want in? The reply, 2 words. I'm ready. And the city outside whispered back, rise, because some victories don't end battles. They begin new ones, built on the ground you never seeded. Camila Rivera, founder of a sustainable fashion tech startup, is publicly dismissed by her husband and undermined by industry insiders. After making Forbes' Next 100, she refuses a controlling acquisition bid, expands globally, first in Bogotá, then Singapore, and faces internal betrayal, hostile counteroffers, and legal freezing attempts. Through leaks, public narrative battles, board support, diplomatic alliances, and resilient legal defense, she thwarts an acquisition designed to silence her. In the final arc, she rallies global founders, secures a court injunction preserving her operational control, and launches the Declaration of Autonomy for Founders. In the epilogue, Verda thrives regionally. The declaration becomes a movement influencing founder protection laws, and Camila begins building her father's legacy in Miami, not as an exit, but as a new foundation for impact and ownership.